Hello, you're listening to the Me Lamptey Show. My name is Joey. This week I am joined by Dom.
Hello.
And by Neil.
Hello.
Right, moments of the week. Dom?
Yeah, so it was my first away day in, I don't know, God knows when. Probably actually since the Birmingham Cup tie, back before the coronavirus. And it's just something about watching the ball hit the back of the net right in front of an away stand, which is just absolutely majestic. There's no other feeling about it, and it's just one of those great things you can experience as a football supporter, having made the long trek to an away game, and everyone's sort of packed in together, and you're just waiting for that moment like that. It hits the back of the net. It's just absolutely beautiful, and it was in the end a pretty good away day, all told.
Context here, Dom, your back garden is basically St Andrews, is that right?
Yeah, well, I literally walked to the stadium. It's closer to, it's much closer to where I live than Coventry, as I discovered on Monday when the trains were rubbish and I had an absolute nightmare getting to the stadium.
Do you, I have a vision of St Andrews for some reason as being sort of typified by burning tyre yards. Do you live in one of them?
No, Moseley's nothing like that. It's it's sort of more bohemian suburb, but never not far away from a tyre fire.
I only ever went twice, but on both occasions I couldn't believe that on one point there was only one door letting the entire away end in. It was like somebody's back door, and we were just all waiting to get up the stairs, and I just thought, how did people do this for an entire season? It felt like it was about to fall apart.
Yeah, as we've since learned.
Yeah, true.
Is Moseley the same as Moseley Shoals?
I don't think so.
Anyway, Neil, your moment of the week.
Detail. I really wanted to say the iconic Callum O'Hare whacking the glasses on his face, which for him to have the audacity to put some glasses on after a celebration was very impressive. Good stuff. But I actually want to say my moment of the week was the attendance against Bournemouth. You know me, I think we're a real big deal. So I'm the sort of guy who just refuses to clap in attendance if it's anything underneath 20, because I think we're that big. So for us to get 24,000, I find it mad how it was 24,000 and not higher, just because there weren't that many gaps in our bit. But either way, I like the idea that we're slowly but surely returning to a level that I believe we should be seeing ourselves. That was great.
Magnificent, yeah. Did you have fun for all that on Monday, though?
Fun is a strong word, Joseph. I enjoyed looking at the crowd, and I enjoyed them taking down the Boyle Sports banners to let more people in. That was quite a symbolic moment. But no, fun, not quite.
Fair dues. I'm going to round things off by saying that I had to experience, again, a generous verb there, a play date on Friday. So I had to take my kids round to another child's house that I'd never been before. And I wasn't quite aware of the social etiquette of just putting your phone on and watching football while you were around there, but I just did it.
Yeah, it's allowed.
Well, yeah, I guess nobody can tell you. So the thing that I was struggling with was that I was going to say, do you mind if I watch it? But I realised that if they said no, then I'd have to say to them, well, I'm going to anyway. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not sure there was much point in me asking, because I was going to do it no matter what. But the trying to watch kids and watch football at the same time, very difficult. But the moment of the week specifically is that I had to turn it off for a second. And I'd just seen Sheaf score the first goal for us. And then I saw a text that said Sheaf's on a hat-trick. And I thought, I don't know what the hell has happened.
Yeah, very good.
But of all the texts I expected to see, in the context of, well, the season and the day, that was not one of them. I think it'd be a
I did
while
find,
yet before I see it again.
but it was mad. But what was weird was, Dom, because you were there, you obviously live in that universe where basically you're 30 seconds ahead of everybody else. So I was sat there watching it on iFollow like everybody else, and all I saw was a text from you saying needed that. And I thought, well, I don't know what it is, but something good's about to happen, and it bloody well did. And the Chiefs scored. I just wouldn't, of all the things, like you say, Joey, all the things to happen, for that to be Chiefs to be scoring those goals, it was pretty surreal.
Very much so. I mean, we're going to move on to what I hope we spend more time talking about, which is that game specifically rather than the Bournemouth game. But it is going to be remiss of me if I don't read from the Wikipedia page of the Ocean Colour Scene album called Moseley Shoals, which says the word Moseley is taken from a suburb of the same name in South Birmingham, UK.
Okay.
Joey, did you just edit this?
We're famous.
I may have done or may not have done. Because they're Midlanders, aren't they? I think they're from like near Lutterworth.
Ah,
there you go.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right, okay, so Dom, you walked from your home in Moseley, which, in case anyone doesn't know, is the home of Moseley Shoals. What's it? But yeah, what's it? So talk me through the game.
Yeah, so it's fair to say that if there hadn't been goals in the first half, nothing would have happened in that first half. It was a game between one team in Birmingham who were pretty happy to just make it attritional, and another team in Coventry who just couldn't get going at all. And I think the key thing of that first half, from like the open play, was that Gyökeres was pretty well marked by Blue's backline, and we were having real problems just getting the ball back to front, and we just looked a little bit laboured, and we couldn't get anything going. I think that's sort of the downside of this formation that we've got, is that when Gyökeres is getting marked, we have to be very precise in our passing and sort of like the angles of our runs, just get anything going. Otherwise, we're sort of just going sideways, or we're just attracting the press and errors. And there's a few moments of danger from that, but Birmingham scored one goal from a corner kick, which wasn't great defending from us, but I think the second from the long throw was much worse, because Gary Gardner is just completely free for that header. And it's also a bit of a long-running joke among Birmingham fans that they never actually score from the long throws. So we were the suckers there, and it was really poorly played. You just thought, oh, have we just froze on what was a big opportunity to sort of get our playoff bid going again?
Do you think those goals were in any way kind of like premeditated? Not that sounds stupid. Like, of course they were trying to score from the set plays, but just in terms of looking at what we do from set plays, and we've got that kind of hybrid zonal / man marking approach, and both of those came from somebody slotting in between Dom Hyam taking his position in the middle of the box, and the people around him trying to mark. Do you think they were that smart? Because it did look for them to get two goals very similar, in a similar way, and we didn't seem to have any kind of plan to counter it. It seemed a little bit, it seemed poor on our behalf, but also felt like they might have done their homework.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to imagine so, given also just like the way Birmingham play, where a big feature of their game is just because they struggle so much from open play, they're going to have to put in a lot of work into set pieces to give themselves a chance in games. And so it wouldn't be a surprise if that proved to be the case. And that left us 2 goals down, and we kind of needed something before half-time, I felt, to get us going again, because it just felt like the nature of that game was starting to really suit Birmingham, and they're starting to grow in confidence. They're starting to knock it around a little bit. But then towards the end of that first half, we grew in composure a little bit more. Gyökeres got into the game a bit more, started getting into their half. And then we have the set piece, which led to Sheaf's goal, which is another instance of poor set piece defending on that day. Rose is just unbelievably free to head that back across goal, and Sheaf is unbelievably free to then head it in. I suppose once that first header was sort of back across goal, that's a lot harder to defend. But yeah, if you're a Birmingham fan, I can't imagine to be that happy conceding that goal. And then to go into half-time level was amazing, just given just what a nothingy half that had been in terms of open play, especially how little of a rhythm we got into. And Sheaf heads in the corner, quite a nice sort of like thumping, authoritative header from, almost sort of what you expect to see from a centre-back. But we have seen that Sheaf can play centre-back, so it's not too huge of a surprise. And then that led to the second half, where I thought we were much better. Even if we weren't creating a ton in open play, Gyökeres was starting to have a really good time against that Birmingham defence. And then that got everyone about 20 yards further up the pitch. You had Hammer and O'Hare starting to get some really threatening positions. Maatsen on the overlap too. Had a couple of promising moments. Even like Sheaf in front of the defence was starting to take command of his domain, and we were playing some decent stuff. And you're just waiting for that goal to put us ahead to happen. And given the day it had to come from a set piece. A really nice header from Michael Rose.
I love that.
It was starting to look like a day, but just because how much of a threat Birmingham were looking from set pieces, or how nervous we looked defending them. The worry when there was one goal between the two sides was that it would only have to take one little moment for Birmingham for them to get back into the game and get a point, which they probably didn't really deserve. But the way both teams were defending, I suppose, goals were always likely to happen. I thought it was curious towards the end that McFadden came on for Hammer. I know Mark Robbins is trying to protect him from getting a 3-game ban, which would end his season, and well, as we are now, would linger into next season if he even is still COF player next year. But it seemed a little too early.
Would it carry over?
Make that? I believe so. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but putting McFadden on, it just felt kind of a little bit too early to make such a move, which seems kind of defensive, sort of like when in the FA Cup final last year when Leicester put on Wes Morgan with about 10-15 minutes to go, and then that invited a load of Chelsea pressure, and they scored, but it was disallowed. So that was my worry, but we produced a really quite nice move for the fourth and final goal. I think actually Martin Wackon deserves a bit of credit for the way he sort of plays on a turn and gets to 1-2 with, I think, O'Hare to get himself in on goal. And I think he probably scores that if he was about 10 to 20% sharper. Just takes a second too many to take his shot. But then it goes to Gyökeres, who really should score from the position he's in. But that didn't matter because we got our cool hand finisher, Callum O'Hare, to stick it in the goal hole. And that made it what became quite an emphatic away win at Birmingham City. And lovely, sunny Good Friday. Starting to feel like the playoffs were back on.
Bit of credit for Waghorn as well, getting out the way of both those shots, which is, if you just focus on that bit specifically, it's pretty comical watching him spinning in the 6-yard box while everybody's kind of pinging balls at him. I think he got a little bit too much grief maybe for that specific moment, because like you say, I think the move, if you go back a few passes, he's a part of it. lots of good movement, slotted him through, and yeah, I mean it wasn't the greatest play from him as he went through on goal, but I think as an impact, fair play to him, and even against Bournemouth, he had that shot, and he's not really there, is he? But he's I think you can say he's still trying.
The question for me, Dom, is where does that rank in terms of overall Gyökeres performances for you?
I think it was one of his better performances as sort of an all-round centre forward. And I think over the past few games, I think we've seen Gyökeres do a lot better work, sort of back to goal than we usually see from him. I think like his main thing has been you play balls into the channels and he can just push defenders out of the way, he can dribble past them and get through on goal. And there's been a few occasions this season where he hasn't sort of released the ball quick enough and ended up starting moves down or sort of allowing them to peter out or just misplacing his passes. And I think he looked a lot better just linking play quickly. I thought there was also moments like that against Bournemouth as well, where he just popped the ball very quickly into O'Hare, and that looked like a really good combination. And it was just a fantastic effort, even from someone who didn't score a goal, to get us into the game that we kind of needed something to sort of turn in our favour or to turn against. And then there's one moment in that game where he just had a run at Nico Gordon, who is a young Birmingham City defender who's actually had a pretty good game, but he just went straight past him, twisted him for skill, and he ended up injuring the young lad. You just showed that he's such a devastating and such a complete player as well when he's on that kind of form. He doesn't necessarily need to score to just have a huge impact on the game.
Neil, anyone that particularly stood out for you?
I think heads up to Hammer and his set pieces, specifically the one in for Rose, which I just thought was a superb goal. I mean, it was just full of purpose and directness, and disappointing that then against Bournemouth we switched back to having Kane and taking the set pieces from that side. So obviously we're well into we have our own system and own purpose. But I just think his delivery is just incredible, and that made it like 4 assists in 2 games or something like that. And he specifically in the second part of the season, and since he's been given that new contract, has stepped up to levels that he's never played for us before. I mean, he's been good, but he's really running the show, and which is strange because actually he's also looking a little bit like a player who really doesn't want to get booked, because we're not seeing any of the madness, which you can imagine, because that's must be really difficult for him to play, knowing that he's got that around his neck, because a lot of his play is just about being an absolute terrier. But I just think him specifically, he just makes such a difference. And then even if he's not setting up from open play, his delivery from set pieces is just incredible. And the other, actually, as I was talking, the one thing I don't like, and even though it's kind of working, is him trying to score from corners every single time as well. From the other side, that's his thing, isn't it? It's like he won't leave the club until he's actually put one in the net. But the good thing about those free kicks, those corners are, even if he is trying to score, they're so threatening and with so much pace. It's still a decent ball in either way. But I don't think you're going to score though. I just don't think he's going. It's not happening for him now, isn't it?
Do you remember Charlie Adams scoring from possibly his own half for Stoke?
Yeah.
And then it was on Sky, and the post-game stuff, I think it was Jamie Carragher saying, this guy was at Liverpool with me for years and tried this 3 times a game for maybe 3 years. He was just like, this is not impressive that he's done it this one time. He's been trying it so many times and has ruined so many attacking moves.
Law of averages. Come on, guys. You will make one eventually.
Yeah. If every time you take a corner, you've got half a mind of trying to score it, at some point he's going to score one and everyone's going to go, oh, this guy's got one direct from the corner, but everyone's going to have to go,
believe him.
Yeah, but he's really been trying. Right, okay. I think there's some things on there that I'd like us to touch on after we've talked about Bournemouth, around kind of some of the players that we've mentioned around whether we see them being here next season and whatever else. But let's do Bournemouth first. How did you feel we were going to get on pre-game, Neil?
Well, it's always one of those, and you have that lingering thought in your mind just because of how things have gone in the past, where you build up these games to a point where they feel absolutely huge. And it was nice to see that generation of interest from people over the course of a couple of days, where it was everybody knew it was a big game, to the night before checking the ticket system and seeing, wow, people, we're really selling some, and then in the next morning seeing an absolute things flying out from the east stand, and it was, from the north stand, sorry. And I just thought, okay, everybody's up for this, but the worry is always, are we not going to be intense enough? Are we all going to feel a little bit flat once we get there because we've worn ourselves out with all the anticipation? But to be honest with you, we were up for it, and that was job one. Is always, can you get yourselves up for the game? And I thought, in terms of intensity, both from the crowd, the kind of the arena as a whole, and also on the pitch, I just thought we were really up for it, and we started in a way where it felt like a big game, and it felt like we were treating it with the intensity that it deserved. And it was, so that side of things, I felt pretty alleviated pretty quickly, where, okay, we are up for this. It was intense. The biggest problem was that Bournemouth were equally as intense, and those first 10 to 20 minutes of that match were absolutely chaos in terms of the speed of play, and it was a really good quality championship match. I just thought, we were up against a team that knew how to press and had this concerted press against our three centre backs, who normally get quite a bit of time on the ball, but they didn't have that time on the ball the other day. But they still managed to kind of work their way out of the defence pretty well, considering the pace of the game, which bodes well for the fact that they must be relatively good defenders if they can play that well under pressure. But I think, like I say, the problem we had was, no matter how well we were playing, we were up against a very, very good team. That's not to say, though, that we shouldn't have scored. I thought obviously we started well. Gyökeres was looking on it. We dropped the ball over the top for him, and he went through basically on goal and had a actually really good shot at the keeper who saved it. And that was a good start and got everybody all kind of whipped up into the excitement of the day. I mean, I think Gyökeres as a whole is a great player and is going to be an even better player. If I have two criticisms of him, one is his passing is pretty sloppy sometimes, I think. I think against Birmingham specifically, his passing was well off. His layoffs are good, but when he has time to pass, they're usually either off the angle or he doesn't make them. The other one is that he takes maybe 4 or 5 shots for him to hit the ball cleanly. So the fact that his first shot of the day was that crisp and on target, and really kind of set a precedent for the fact that we were going to go for this, and we were playing, we were determined that this was going to be a game for us. Unfortunately, they also had a chance relatively early on, and they took it. And at the time, you're in the stadium and you're so hyped up by the game, you feel frustration because you've just conceded a goal and you've gone behind again. On reflection, I look at that goal and there are things you could potentially have done better, but actually I feel like I give credit to them for the way they created that goal. I mean, down the left, it was sharp and crisp, and the header was actually really good. He got back, he leaned into it, he created a lot of power, and he made Moore have to do something, and he wasn't equal to it. And I just thought it was a really, really good goal, and it was a bit of a sucker punch, but the game didn't stop at that point. It was a sucker punch. It was clinical, but we carried on. We didn't back off. We didn't change the way we were playing, and we kicked on again, which was really pleasing to see, because against a team as good as Bournemouth, you sort of think, is that going to be too much for us? The problem we had was, it's the same. I don't want to go over old ground all the time, but we don't have the kind of the clinical edge in areas. We create up to a point, and we had chances, and the chances that we had were probably good enough to make the keeper work harder than he did, or make more of them than we did. And O'Hare specifically was one where, if that's dropping to someone like Matty Godden, for instance, you feel like we'd have a better opportunity of scoring. You feel like he'd make the keeper work. Whereas O'Hare does a load of great stuff, but shooting isn't his strongest suit. And I never really fancied him putting the ball away when it came through. And really, the kind of the tale of the day was we struggled when we had the chances to make real kind of a momentum from them and actually turn them into something more than they were. Whereas Bournemouth had 3 real chances on the day, and the first was a good goal. The second one kind of smelled a little bit of us being a bit scared of Solanke, and it was only that hint of hesitation, but it turned something that could have been like sniffed out sooner into something which was basically an opportunity for him to shoot. We allowed him to shoot, and it was obviously lucky that it took a deflection and rolled in. But that was their sucker punch again. That was two chances on goal, 2-0 down, and that takes you from something where it's a game which is within your grasp to suddenly, shit, these guys have just scored 2 against us. They're really pushing us. It's a really hard game, and we've got to come out in the second half and score 2 goals just to get back into it. Which, us being us isn't a huge issue, but the main thing here is this wasn't us playing Birmingham. This is us playing Bournemouth, and they are a completely different team. And then second half, obviously, it had to happen, didn't it? One more chance, Solanke throw-on goal, and whereas O'Hare earlier was in a kind of similar position, probably an easier position, wasn't able to do too much with it. Solanke looked like a guy who scored 25 plus goals this season and put it in really, really nicely, and that was the killer. I mean, that was a point where the gap between the teams went from 2 teams that are going together, and there was just a little bit of luck, to suddenly we lost our sense of being able to get anything from that game, and Bournemouth really, really stepped up the gear in terms of their control. And then they brought on Philip Billing, who I said this on Twitter.
You really
the other
like
day,
Philip
but
Billing, don't you?
I can't help. Like I haven't. Look, I've seen it. I saw him in the Premiership, and I saw him last season, and specifically when he plays against us, he just
Good player.
everything looks so under control, and it's mad. And then they brought him on, and he didn't break sweat, and he just did everything at his own pace. And the size of him as well is just ludicrous. He's standing next to Jamie Allen, and it's like, how possibly can you compete with this guy? And I think he's a really good player, and I obviously I overrate him sometimes, but it was, that was just kind of a sign where they brought him on and they just took full control of the game. And the final kind of 30 minutes were more of a lesson really in kind of how you see a game out. But some of that was down to the fact that we kind of lost any sense of us really being able to get anything out of it. And to be honest, I think that was probably the bigger driver behind Robinson's changes. I think, he realised that there was a risk of us losing more. They had so much control over the game, and we needed to bring kind of some stability to our performance. So bringing on McFadzean, Kelly and Waghorn, on the face of it, you're like, oh my God, this smacks of being boring. But I actually, the more I reflect on it, feel like that was probably the smartest thing he could have done. It's not a cup game. This is a league. And while a lot of people saw this as the end of the playoffs, he can't think that way. He needs to look at goal difference. And I think probably settling for not allowing this team, who was starting to dominate, to do anything other than kind of see the game out at 3-0, which is very unlike me to say. I actually think that's a smart move. And it's disappointing because the game didn't go the way we wanted to. But the more I look back at it, there's nothing. There was no new information there. I don't think necessarily we're playing poorly in the first half. Just things didn't go our way, and that one goal in the second half where it made it 3-0, it killed it. And then I don't blame the team for not being able to muster up the whatever it was needed to kind of turn it around, because by that point you're basically done. And also Bournemouth, but they're just too good. So sad that it had to be Bournemouth on that day of all the teams. This was a huge opportunity to really kind of step into the playoff picture. And of all the teams we play, from my mind, the best team in the league. Typical, but
I really disagree with you. I really disagree.
You don't think Bournemouth are any good?
So I don't think it's a case of Bournemouth aren't any good. But
That's a broader point, by the way. I don't think necessarily they were the best team in the league on that day. I just think things switched from us being in the game to not being in the game, and then it was just easy for them just to manage it. But the broader point is, I do think Bournemouth actually, everything I've seen of them, are probably the best in the league.
I mean, look, I think it's probably pointless me espousing an opinion because I know so little. I am going to throw it at Dom and ask him what he thinks of it.
I sort of agree with Neil. Sort of just on the day, that is just like what can happen when you come against a team with the players of the quality that Bournemouth have, and really, I think quite a lot of that team is probably like at least a lower end Premier League team, if not a bit higher. But I think there was also reason to believe that we had a good chance going into that game, just based on the way Bournemouth had been playing in the weeks prior to that. I think they'd only had something like 3 or 4 shots on target.
I think it's
over
four.
The past
I think it's 4
4
shots on target in 3 games, isn't it?
Yeah, and then in this game they score from the first 3 that they have. Sometimes, if you just have very good players, you don't have to play as well. But I do think there was also just sort of their structure was very good on the day. They unsettled us in a way that I don't think other teams would. They made us work really hard, as Neil said earlier, just to like work the ball forward up the pitch, and then the way they just sort of took the sting out of the game was really hard for us to deal with, just because they had much better players than us. It's sort of how do you define a good team, I suppose, because I think we've seen teams like, say, Swansea, who we've played this season, have just like dominated the ball and made us look completely silly. That wasn't the kind of game that it was, but it was just a bit of a scoring another way of just being super efficient.
Joe, I'm really interested to hear what you think, though.
I think they're a little bit of a mess. I think that man for man, they've got lots of really good players, and I was impressed by how physical and how quick their defence was, and how kind of alert they were. But I didn't think they were terribly well organised. And likewise, it's funny that you talk about Philip Billing. I really like Philip Billing, but I much prefer Jefferson Lerma. I think Lerma's brilliant. And I remember when we played last season against them. Do you remember when we were on Sky and Harmer got sent off? We were all going mad about Harmer. And I think it was maybe in October. And that was the first time that we came up against anyone where Lerma just beat the shit out of him. And you were like, oh, he's brilliant. But admittedly, this is 2 years ago. And I think Harmer's really improved. But you were like, this is someone like of genuine Premier League quality that's really kind of bossing Harmer. And I just look at Bournemouth and think there's a mixture of 2 things. I think there's some players that, like, I don't get Dominic Solanke. I know he scored a load of goals, but I think he's the sort of player that would score a load of goals in that Bournemouth team, because they're just giving him so many chances. And he missed that awful chance right towards the end of the game for the hat-trick that he really should have scored. And it's a weird sort of... I know these things are conflicting. I think in some senses, they're really badly organised. And I think we could have exploited that better. And I think it speaks to the fact that they scored their 3 shots on target, but that I think it suited them to be ahead and then defend that lead. I think they can probably do that. But I think it's a shame that we didn't do more out of the chances that we had to start off with. I know that's very unstructured.
No, I do get that, because I mean, it's kind of weirdly, I feel that we're closer in what we think than it maybe came across. So I mean, there's kind of 2 sides to this. There's my broader view of Bournemouth as a team. And a lot of that is based on just in the 4 games that they have played against us. And basically, of all those games, the game at the weekend was the least superior that they've looked, aside from the second half where we kind of made it easier for them. But I think the other bit is just how that game went at the weekend. I do kind of agree. I don't think necessarily they were the best team in the league on that day, but I think given everything that happened, they do have a kind of a sense of superiority against us specifically when they come up against our players and kind of pound for pound, whether they're structured or not. I actually thought they were well structured. Certainly in the first half, I thought it was a really good game of football, and I thought their press and their ability kind of across the entire kind of forward line to make life as difficult as possible for us was specifically something that was really, really difficult for us. But I do kind of agree. I don't think I do think they were there for us for the taking. But as things went away from us, and sometimes things go away from you when you don't necessarily do anything wrong. And I think that was exactly what happened at the weekend. I didn't go out at half time thinking, oh shit, we've played crap here. We've just been battered. They've just picked us off. And it's just like, no, it was a really good, intense battle between two good high tempo teams. And the difference being that they've had two shots and they've put them in the net. The third one was the one that kind of compounded it, where when given the opportunity to absolutely kill the game, they did take it and they took it in a way which I don't really see us being able to do. And then it's hard to kind of put any words on what happened by the end of it. I do think it was a bit of a lesson in terms of we couldn't get the ball off them, but maybe that was just because we were so downbeat. That's why it was. But it was a weird game, but I kind of have to stick by my view on them as a whole. Although now you've told me that they've only had 3 shots on target, I'm starting to review my entire beliefs about everything. So
I mean, you're the king of this, Neil, of saying what happened previously doesn't matter a single jot, does it? Because they scored 3 against us. I mean, and they scored all of their shots on target. So I know what you're saying, and that there's a parallel Birmingham podcast that are currently recording right now and saying, yeah, I know we were 2-0 up, but I'm not totally sure that we were the worst team of that game. Football sometimes is just football, isn't it? And that I know that isn't the greatest analysis of all time, but that I went into that game really thinking that we could have them. And also, I come out of it having lost 3-0 thinking, I don't know whether I'd have changed anything terribly about how we went into it. I still, at the same time, think it's a missed opportunity because I think they are a good manager away from being a much better team. And I think if they think that they're going to go into the Premier League with Scott Parker, I think they've probably got quite big problems. But again, I'm going to have to cede to my colour commentator, who's got much better knowledge on Dom. How do you think they will get on next season?
I'm sort of in a similar camp as you. It sort of just feels like in these 2 years in the Championship, Bournemouth haven't done the thing they sort of really need to do with their time out of the Premier League and sort of just get fresh ideas and move sort of beyond that Eddie Howe era. They've sort of just gone, we really need to get back to the Premier League and we don't care how. When they get back there, you can just see them just doing a bit of a Fulham, really.
But as well is that I know you shouldn't in a team game place too much focus on individuals, but the last season everyone was like, oh, Danjuma's good. And then this season, you look at him and go, you should have, if you had Danjuma, you should have got promoted. You had a cheat code. How did you manage to mess that up?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of players in that squad that I kind of think you look at that entire squad and think, you're how many points off Fulham now? The other thing is that there isn't like a tremendous challenger for that second place, is there? I think Huddersfield are in third at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah.
But Huddersfield haven't had a great season. They've had a great second half of the season, haven't they?
Yeah, Huddersfield have been like quite good at just keeping games tight and nicking stuff through set pieces and stuff like that. We were looking at Forest to
try and put
Bournemouth under pressure, but I think when they lost to Luton on Friday, it just made too big a gap.
But Bournemouth are going to go up a second by dint of the fact that everyone else, third and down, have had too long a bad spell during the season. And so I know that we're now talking too much about Bournemouth, but I looked at them and just thought this is a really good opportunity for us to take points off someone around that position, because I don't think we're going to take any points off Huddersfield, and I just think it's a shame that we didn't. But that said, I wasn't sure about how we do against Birmingham, and then we scored 4 goals against them. I would like to. Have we got anything specifically to talk about on that game before we move on?
No more, I don't think.
That's a no. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, kind of going into the final bits of the season. So, firstly, as we look to summer recruitment, what would be your priority in terms of next season? Would it be increasing the number of chances that we score, which is 0.1, I think, of problems that we've had, or would it be keeping it tight at the back? Dom, what would you look for?
Well, I think if you're based on this season, you've got to look at the defence. If you look at sort of where our goals scored rank, we're sort of like joint 7th, I think, in the division. And we've got 2 strikers who's reached double figures. Then our defence, I think we've got like the 6th worst record for clean sheets, and we're like 17th overall for goals conceded. We've just leaked so many silly goals this season. And the strange thing is, I don't think we have bad defenders, and we don't have a bad goalkeeper. But it just seems to be something about, I don't know whether it's we sort of try and open ourselves up too much, more than we're sort of capable to cover at the back, or there's just a lack of just like seriousness in the defences. And that sense, like in League One during certainly in the final few months of that promotion season, it just felt like, right, we're gonna keep a clean sheet here, and we really want to do it, and we're gonna do everything it takes to keep a clean sheet. We sort of just feel a bit more loose, and if things go against us, we sort of shrug our shoulders and try and score at the other end. So I don't know whether it might just take the injection of, say, at least one centre back there who can just bring a bit more aggression and a bit more composure at the back. That could just really quickly change that attitude in defence. I think that would be the key area I'd be looking for, and also the thing we've sort of just been screaming out for the last 2 or 3 years. Just give Callum O'Hare some help, please, in attacking midfield.
Neil, what would you say out of those two?
Yeah, I tend to agree. And we're in that interesting position where we can point questions at our attack and also at our defence. And basically what's happened is we've kind of balanced it all out, and we're going to probably end up in a kind of mid-table. I mean, I was doing a lot of looking of the numbers recently, and it's mad when you think kind of our open play stuff is up there with kind of the best teams in the league, where we've got like the second most amount of shots from open play and the 4th best expected goals from open play. So, we're doing something right in terms of the broad way that we play. But I think it's absolutely clear that something has to kind of step up further forward of the pitch, and whether that's an extra option up top. And the big question here is obviously what happens if we lose either Hammer, O'Hare or Gyökeres. Obviously that then changes things hugely. But I just think, if we want to basically turn a season like we've had this season, which is one where we've done most of the things right, but we can probably look back at it and think that we haven't taken the opportunities that our broader play has kind of presented to us. And how do we then move that forward? And so, I think another striker, whether, we have to be realistic. We're in the Championship now, and you need options as an alternative. players if things aren't going right, and you need pressure. And really this season, because of the way Godwin has been injured and how basically ineffective Walker and Waghorn were, we just haven't had any pressure, and it's all been on Gyökeres. Whereas, you know, I think a real kind of option to make us a proper threat up front is good. But then I completely agree with Dom's point, and it's a really interesting one around where I think we have kind of as a team the innate ability to go through games and play a certain way, and we're strong, and we are strong kind of pound for pound at the back. But I do think there is, I don't know if complacency is the right word, but there is a kind of a drop of professionalism at points, and that is one of the reasons why we do let in these silly goals, which kind of seem to be this recurring thing. So yeah, again, I would have an extra option kind of defensively, and then I think obviously left side of the defence, if we don't have Maatsen sticking it out, I do think that we've seen this season that as a balanced unit, we need somebody who is kind of a Dabo-esque approach to the life on the left hand side, and that's where we've been as strong as possible. One thing we haven't mentioned is Dabo got injured, and it looks like we're not seeing that at the end of the season, which is a big shame. But for next year, if we can have Dabo again on the right hand side and somebody with that kind of dynamism on the left hand side as well, I think that really rounds us off quite nicely.
The other thing that so the reason I asked that question specifically is I was gobsmacked today when I found out that we're the fourth top, admittedly joint fourth top scorers in the division. I think Dom, you said that you thought that we were seventh, but I guess
yeah.
But that I just hadn't clocked that at all, because for me the season has been typified by missed chances, arguably above all else. Which I know that we've got two double-figure scoring strikers, but I also think it's been sort of typified by a lack of diversity of goal scorers that's probably been diluted somewhat recently, hasn't it? Because Michael Rose has scored so frequently, and Ben Sheaf's got two, and Callum O'Hare's got a few recently. But I would have said that we would have needed to have looked at a goal scoring number 10 as being an absolute priority. But you're absolutely right. The thing that has come to pass that we have alluded to over the last, certainly amongst ourselves, because I know we haven't podcasted quite so often as recently, but certainly on our WhatsApp group and everything else, is that there's been a lot of talk about sort of easy goals that we've conceded. But you've both touched on it there, is I'm not terribly convinced that we've got a huge problem at the back, man for man. Usually you would look at defenders and suggest that there were, one or two weak links. I wonder whether it's a bit of a killer in central midfield that we might need. But even that doesn't feel really correct, does it? Because it doesn't feel Harmer and Sheaf, who I think we've all been very happy with, they're not defensive, are they?
Yeah, and I don't think Robbins. I think Robbins is a man who actually might look at that in the same way as we do, but he is so ruthless. I think we can expect some shifts in people who we didn't expect over the summer, just because he wants to kind of step it up, and where he might see detail which we don't necessarily see. I mean, someone who I think stepped up a lot in the second half of the season, but I think might find himself out of the place is Jamie Allen. I think if we, in the same way that he was very ruthless with people like Grimmer when they'd done so well for us, in order to kind of step things up next season, I just think we need absolute relentless quality and where you've got that with Hammer, who just plays the same. And to be honest, Sheaf, more than he has before, has stepped up regularly. Jamie Allen is very much a two-on-two-earth kind of player at the moment, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we kind of find ourselves struggling every now and again. But it's such a weird one, because I was looking at just generally kind of, I always find expected goals conceded quite an interesting one, specifically from like open play, because that's more of a kind of a measure of just how lucky you've got, or how unlucky you've got, or just how much you're creating or kind of allowing the other team. And we're in this position where attacking wise it makes sense. What you said, we're like fourth top scorers in the league, and I was looking at the XG, we're actually like 7 goals underneath what we would expected to score, which in the context of the league is, we're like third in that list as well. West Brom are something like 12 under their expected goals. So another team will look at it and think, well, how the hell haven't we done this season? But I just think there's real nuance there, and I think Mark is going to have to be pretty ruthless to kind of eke that out, because, like you say, we all like the players. We look at them, we think, oh, they're doing all right, but to make that step up from playing all right but not getting what you deserve to actually making sure you get what you deserve, you might have to bring in some people who are a little less flaky. My vocab's gone tonight. I'm going to say flaky, but not flaky. A little bit better than flaky.
I think that's fair enough. And no, there was this other thing I wanted to talk about was the Player of the Season nominations come out today. So, I mean, I was about to ask you whether you're prepared to share yours, but then I realised that it's not important.
Yeah, exactly.
I know there's a privacy issue here, but is everyone happy to reveal who they went for? I mean, in the interests of openness, I've gone for Big Vic.
I can see that.
I would argue possibly that he hasn't been pound for pound our best performer, because I think it's possible you could argue Dom Hoyam or Harmer above him. The thing I would say is that he's the one player that I don't think we will fully appreciate how much we'll miss him until after he's gone.
Agreed.
Because I can think of lots and lots of games where our plan has been to just shove the ball to him and hope that he can drag it 40 yards and sort of fashion chances for us. And Harmer is absolutely exceptional. But I think that Harmer will succeed. You know, like when Fleck left us for Sheffield United and it turned out that he was a much better player than we even realised he was. I think Harmer will be absolutely fine in that respect. I think Jock is elevating us even above what we are. Does that make sense as a comparison?
Yeah, you only have to look at the first 10 games of the season. We weren't that team without him. That team, everything was going well, but there's a point where there's a difference between having him in the team and having him and not having him. And I'd like to listen back to some of those early pods, but we were very complimentary and very clear that he had a specific and important role to play. And like you say, Hammer overall shows his quality all the time. But if you take him out of the team, yeah, we might feel a little bit different. But up front, Gyökeres is a totally different and a real threat up front, where you're going to get some goals versus you're just not going to get the same from any other strikers. And it's, I didn't go for him myself, but I totally get that if you're going to give awards out for impact in the season, he is right up there.
He's not as fast as Callum Wilson was, but he's quick. And he's not as strong as Jukovic, for example. But you're not going to get the best you're not going to get the best of him from most defenders. And he doesn't score as many goals as, I don't know, whoever you want to choose, McNulty. But he's still going to get nearly 20 this season. The thing is how often are you going to get a striker that can do all of them things?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. For $1 million as well.
Who did you go for then, Neil?
I went for Hamer.
You went for
Hamer. After
on account of him being definitely our best player?
Is that exactly how I judged it. So I'll help rationalise every other view if you like, but I still thought, I just think, and I try and get to the head of the players on the while as well. And if you're playing in a team with him, they must look at him and think, my God, this player is just phenomenal. And specifically, he was playing at a level up until like January, February, where it was, you're playing really well, but we're taking this a little bit for granted because we know what you like. So if ever he drops below that level, we always think, he's not had a great game. But since kind of that point of the new contract, he has stepped up to a level that I didn't realise, and it's just he's loving playing at the moment, it seems, and he's just, some of the stuff he does and his ability with the ball is just absolutely first class. For me, he deserves it.
Dom, who did you go for?
Yeah, I've gone for Harmer too. Just he has been, he's reached a new level this season, and there's just been so many games this year where he's done remarkable things, and he's sort of just dragged us through. And just elevated the quality of the team. He's just a magnificent footballer to watch, and I think he's been the most consistently at a high level throughout the campaign. So, I've gone for Hammer.
How much do you think all three of us have been affected by recency bias? Because I think there's a level to which you could. I think there's arguments for McFadzean being player of the season.
I was going to say the same point, but it's not so much forgetting the level that he was at, because I made loads of points around Christmas about that man was, player of the season level, and through potentially not even any fault of his own, he kind of was rested in January, and from that point onwards, where he got COVID and things just kind of, he wasn't then able to kind of get back into the team, and you sort of think, well, there's then the question: does half a season of an absolute excellent level warrant something? Warrant a player of the season vote? And if he had played the same way that he had done for the first half of the season and been in the team and done the same thing again, absolutely. But I think it's really well noted that he was absolutely superb first half of the season.
Because Vic has had 2/3 of a brilliant season, hasn't he? The middle of it disappeared.
Very quiet.
The bits that Godden have played, he scored in almost every single game that he's played in, but he's not played in enough games. Hyam has been fabulous all the way through the season, but probably his highest heights haven't reached the highest heights of other players. Ben Sheaf's improvement and Jamie Allen's improvement and consistency throughout the season probably really warrant mention. It's really nice for once to have a season where there are so many contenders.
It's nice that it's more diverse conversation, isn't it? Sometimes it's just so easy. But I think, when you look at it, it's probably a conversation, but also a kindness to some of those players on the list where you're like, oh, yeah, we'll include you because you've done much better than you normally do. But then there are also just levels, aren't there, in terms of people who have just played, you can't then compare. I mean, people have kind of put Simon Moore in there as a kind of as a vote, who, absolutely fine goalkeeper, and he could be happy with what he's contributed this year. But if you're lining up Simon Moore against Gyökeres or Hamer for player of the season, in terms of contribution, I find it very difficult to kind of put those two in the same bracket. Same three, sorry.
I think you're completely fair. Right, okay, so anything else that we've talked about that anybody needs to say, because they wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if they hadn't said it?
No, I feel like I've overdone it, so I'm going to zip it.
That's all right. Plugs, Dom, where are you at? I noticed that there's I haven't read it yet, but the 75 games for Michael Rose is out today.
Yeah, there was a few milestone appearances over the bank holiday weekend. So I've been cranking them out on sidewayssammy.com, and of course tomorrow there'll be a West Brom preview, probably by the time you're listening to this. So check out sidewayssammy.com.
Have you began the end of season review?
I fired that up this week, and
I was going to say, do you not start that at the beginning of the season? It's epic, isn't it?
It's generally the Easter holidays, or chocolate and season review.
When we beat Birmingham, you like how you hear about journalists at games where it's like a last minute goal and they have to scrap their match report? Were you furious about the idea that we might have gone up and it had ruined your work that you'd have done so far?
Well, if we'd made the playoffs, it would have bought me an extra month. So, I'm still...
Well, let's wait till next week, eh? You'll never know.
Well, yeah, quite. Neil, you've been terrifically busy.
Oh, I'm furious. I'm all over it. So yeah, I'm back going on skybluesblog.co.uk. So bits and bobs writing on there. And tomorrow or today, when people hear it, there'll also be a new Sky Blues blog notebook. That's me talking on YouTube. So look out for that and subscribe to me, please, because I need the validation. Thank you.
It's not just talking; it's looking as well. It's your beautiful face that's involved in it as well, which I think, is really missing from this enterprise.
No, you flirt. Marry me.
Right, lovely. Okay, that's us done, I think. Yeah, thank you very much, Dom.
All right, yeah, good to be on.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks.
And thank you for listening. Bye.